Hello, everyone. It's Cate Stillman with yogahealer.com and Yoga Health Coaching. And I'm here with Courtney LaCava of CourtneyLaCava.com. And we are going to talk about, or we're having a coaching gym on the fear of being unlikable. So I can just read some of the things that you wrote down, and then you can just like update and correct me. So struggling with increasing enrollment, resistance to picking up the phone, doing deep work on discovery calls and getting to pain points, but struggling with discomfort around objections when someone says no, and the fear of conflict around that and being unlikable. So it sounds like what is working is your course, your year-long course and your seasonal cleansing, and people are having huge breakthroughs and healing long-term, physical, mental, emotional issues. You have a good VA, you've got good systems, you have confidence in teaching. It's like, it's all just around lead gen and picking up the phone and the tough rejection in sales is what it sounds like.
Yeah, so I've been studying the nervous system and somatic experiencing and looking at polyvagal theory, which is, and I do get nervous on these calls, so I need a minute to
Oh, you do?
down.
Okay. Like...
So I think it's the Facebook Live thing. I think I haven't done it that much. So whenever I do, I'm more aware of like how many people are on here. So for me, I've been studying polyvagal theory, which is looking at the three functions of the nervous system. So we have the sympathetic, parasympathetic, and then we have the social nervous system. And that's been really like eye-opening for me because the function of the the social nervous system is the fawning or fitting in. And recognizing, learning that like women, because we have these bonding hormones that when we're under threat, that kind of fawning or fitting in function of the nervous system can be the way that we actually maintain our safety. And so I was thinking a lot about my own experience in life and so much about like controlling other people's judgments of me or people pleasing or kind of not really stepping into my authentic self as much as I want to, kind of that feeling of always being a little, not mainstream, but recognizing, okay, to be safe, you kind of have to camouflage to be part of this. So as I've grown my programs and kind of feel like I want to step more into my authentic voice and, picking up the phone to call people, there's this part of me that feels like I feel that wall that I'm coming up against, that losing sight of, okay, this is really about that person, and recognizing that, the part of me that's like, you don't ever want to push someone's boundaries, like if someone puts up a boundary, then you don't want to be seen as that person who's like being pushy, essentially, because that's
right.
unlikable, and that feels like a threatening way to be. So I think for me, it's recognizing that actually that way of being is not keeping me safe anymore. And so how do I kind of unwire that part of my nervous system that equates like controlling other people's perceptions of me or doing things to avoid being judged or being perceived as being pushy, no longer is what's keeping me safe.
Yeah. And so then that's good because it's showing that like, well, pushiness isn't effective. Right. And so sometimes it's like, well, why was I being pushy in the first place? Like, what is there a more effective way to help people get the help they need?
But I also feel like I've shied away from that so much. So if anything, tending towards backing away from having the harder conversations, because like if someone's objections come up, it's like doing that deeper work because of feeling like, well, they've just put up a boundary, so I want to respect that boundary. Do you understand what I mean by that? Like, I feel like I'm not doing the harder work around the objections because that place of like, what I'm equating as pushing might feel.
To me, it's okay. I'm just going to draw this out because I think it'll help, and I'll try to talk it through because I know people are going to listen on the podcast, and we'll have the images in the show notes. So I often draw like the funnel of on the lateral. So like people, they hear of you, and then they, through marketing materials, social media, through emails, through education, they get to know and like and trust you. And part of this is having one-on-one conversations, right? And then eventually one-on-one conversations can lead to an enrollment, and then you can actually serve them towards their goal. So if it's always in light of their goal, and I know you know that, and I'm just reminding people, it's like the point isn't to make a sale. The point is, like you said, people, and this is word for word, you guys, people are having huge breakthroughs, healing long-term and even genetic, physical, mental, and emotional health issues. So if we know, like, that's we keep our eyes on the prize. So in the one-on-one situation, the question to me really here is, at what point is the person like, yeah, I want to be in the club. I want to be in the club. And if they're like, yeah, you can help me because I get that you have a club for a reason. Like, there's a reason that you have this program. And I understand what that reason is. And I understand that you can help me get to my end goal. Is that already being established in these situations where the boundaries are coming up?
Yeah, I think people are pretty clear. That's what we do. Excuse me. And it's the money and time issues. I feel like that's always the challenge that does come up.
Okay, so let's just pause there. So if here they're like, yes. And one of the questions I ask is like, if it were free, would you be in? Just so it's like, because like, it's not like free. For me, things are free. I mean, there's a shit ton of stuff that's free on the internet. It doesn't mean that I'm going to do it. It doesn't mean I'm going to show up and be committed to doing it, because then there's a time investment, there's an energy investment, there's a trade-off in priorities, right? And so it's like, is this their priority? Yes, it's their priority to overcome their healing long-term mental, physical, emotional health issues. Yes, they want to have a breakthrough. Yes, they trust you. Yes, like yes train, right? Like yes, this is all lining up. You've established enough of a relationship where they get that this is what you help people with, and they are someone that you could help and that you really actually care about helping them. And if that's all like, yeah. Okay, great. So it's a yes. I'm getting that's a yes. So at that point, it's like, in the way that I'll draw it in my crude stick figure drawing, and we've got two people sitting on chairs, right? It's like at this point, when it's yes, you come around to their side of the table, right? And it's like, you're now both sitting at, I'm going to try to draw a table, like, now let's find this together. So there should be no there should be no challenge on their issues, because now at this point you're like, oh my gosh, let's find the money. Like, this seems really freaking important. Like, and how cool, you found a fit. Like, it's so unusual in this day and age to actually like find the kind of help that you need, like for real, and to see you through to the end of getting that help. I mean, ask anyone who's caught in the allopathic or Western medical system about this, and they're going to tell you that they can't get 20 minutes with their doctor, right? Like, they can't get the help that they need. And that most people in the holistic wellness profession haven't actually structured a program towards results. And so if that's all come out in that yes train of like, they really get that this is going to work and they're all in. And if they could get in, they would be all in and they'd be a good member. If that's, because that's the work of these one-on-ones in here. Then the partnership side, it really is an energetic shift into like, okay, like no one's convincing anyone to do anything. Like, it's already a yes. So now, like, I'm like on your side. I'm like your best friend right now, just being like, okay, let's figure out let's figure out how to get you into this. Because like, and I firmly believe that the money's out there. And if this is the priority, we're going to find the time in your calendar. So we should not have any money or time objection issues.
Yeah. And I think I'm seeing that as like, oh, their objections are like this boundary that's coming up between us, rather than the idea of me like getting on the same side as them. And okay, let's work through this. And I think that's where I'm just getting really, that piece. And then also just like picking up the phone to call people, that and continuing the relationship past the original, like, okay, well, right now isn't the right time, or they said no at that time, but then following up with them and picking up the phone and continuing to do that.
Yeah, the re-engagement. Yeah. Yeah. So it's like, what happens when it goes to, there's a yes there, when it goes to no, excuse me. And so it's like, when there's a no, then how do we get back on? But let's just, excuse me, let's just go back to the yes, and going, there's a pivot here. There's a pivot in once you've established things like, once you've established like, this is the priority in their life. What's the priority? These goals. That's the priority in their life. And that those goals, that these are specific, they're SMART goals, right? So it means that they're specific, that they're measurable. And this is the work of this one-on-one conversation, that they're actionable. There's something that you're going to guide them to take action on, or your group is going to motivate them to take action on. They're realistic. And realistic, I'm less worried about that. Actually, I often am like, you know what? Because I see people blow goals out of the water. And in a lot of courses where people are like, oh my gosh, that, like, I had no idea I could be here in a year. Right. So realistic to me is a little bit less important. I actually go for like a little bit more on the wildest dream side of that, but choose your own adventure. And then time bound, meaning where they will be in 1 year, because that's the length of your course, right? That's the length that we're aiming for. And if their habits are on a current trajectory that's leading them year over year in the wrong direction, that compounds. So that actually gets worse over time. And so you also want to know the trade-off in terms of that. So once that's all established, and all that needs to get established on, again, like this happens before the point of sale. And so it's really important to connect these two dots, that like, that is what is happening there. It's a priority, that the goals are SMART, and that there's trust. Do you trust I can get you there? Asking that point blank. I'll often ask that in a sales conversation. Someone's 90% down the funnel. I'm like, do you trust I can get you to where you're trying to go? Yes. Okay, great.
Okay.
So are you ready to join? Well, I don't know if I have the money. Okay, well, if it wasn't for the money, are you ready to join? I'm looking for a clear yes. I'm looking for us to establish a point in time, and then I'll often repeat it. So setting money aside, you're in. This is a yes. In your body right now, you're getting a yes. A yes. These goals are important. Yes to the group. Yes to me guiding you. All that's energetically a yes. Yes. Is it a big yes? Yes. Like, I'm just dragging that out now. I'm like, this is important. Like, we're establishing, because like, before we dive into objections, let's just make sure that we're in. Because if we're in, we're going to be able to find the money. Good on that?
Yeah.
Okay. So that part, practice that. Like, make that the goal of a sales conversation, is to have that happen. And the thing about sales, like one of the things that I know with sales is it's like such an important thing to have enough leads to practice and practice and practice and practice getting better at enrollment conversations. And if anyone's ever given you a no, it's like a great opportunity to practice again, with that same person. Okay, so we're good on this part. Like, this is, I would listen to this 2 or 3 times in the next couple of weeks, just because it's a very direct lesson in enrollment, but it's really easy to see in a sales conversation or enrollment conversation. It's really easy to see when you're not doing it. So as you're having enrollment conversations, then you can kind of go back and listen to this and be like, did I do that? And if you're like, yes, I'm doing it. Because once you get it, it's like, oh, you won't not do that again in the future. It becomes a habit, just like tying your shoes. You don't have to figure out where your fingers go anymore. But like, at one point in time, you feel like,
I remember one time you saying something like, you can't trust that they're always going to be making choices in their own, but I don't know if that was exactly what you said, but you can't trust that they're necessarily making choices in their own best interest. Is that what you've said before? Yeah.
I would say, I would in general assume people will make choices the way they've made choices before.
Yeah.
So the only way that someone has really is stepping into their potential as they're making different decisions that they're making decisions fundamentally differently than the way they have before. And so a lot what we're trying to get to in that yes is like a really strong reconnection to intuition, to potentiality. And I will often say things like, like however you've invested in the past is a reflection of how you feel right now, where you're at right now. So if you want to feel different than you are feeling right now, and if you want to be somewhere different in the future, you have to change how you invest, right? And I'm just waiting for a yes. I'm like trying to get like, do we agree on that?
Yeah.
We can assume people will make investment decisions the same way they have. And that's a lot of what I try to do in this no like in trust factor part is it's like, let me go back to green on this just to emphasize, like if it's a no, then to me, that's what marketing and social material is so good for, is it's like, let me help you get to where you want. All you're trying to do is help people get to the goal. And we know from the healthiest people we all hang out with, it's like they've all invested really differently. Like they've invested to be usually in trainings with people who are heading towards better. Like really rare, like very few people get there just on their own. And they might do it in a number of different ways. But like I would say, like my daughter on the gymnastics team, I mean, I pay $175 a month for coaching, which is probably dirt cheap. A couple $100 a month in meet fees, right? Plus hotels and travel, right? It's not a cheap sport, but like I know exactly what I'm investing in, right? And it's not the same as like not making those investments.
Yeah.
All right. So we need more people in the pipeline. Like that's really, and that's part of the issue. And that's part of what kills confidence is that I'm trying to draw circles here. My pad's not really letting me right there. And so we need more leads that are going in, through all these stages so that we get more out in this way. So in terms of leads, there's referrals because you have people. So one of the easiest way to call is like we call them member check-ins or member blitzes. The blitz was a term I got from one of my buddies who grows big companies and used to grow sales teams. And it's like a member blitz is where you just call all the past people you've worked with before. And you're just trying to you're asking people, is there someone I can offer a conversation to?
But this is where I'm getting stuck. It's like, okay, call all these people. And then I start I talk myself out of picking up the phone and following through with the whole process, because that feels like, email I'm fine with, but actually picking up the phone and calling I'm getting really stuck with that.
Right. And part of the problem is like email was really hip in like 2007, but it's not.
Well, people are getting bombarded right now.
And we'll continue to. Like email is going to continue to drop in efficacy and increase in protection. So, and that's good in a way. So messengers that's better. Phone is good. Leaving messages for people is good. So if, again, like what I usually come to with like fear of reaching out is usually this is coming from the ego. So it's like an ego protection mechanism because it's really all about you.
Right.
It's not about their friend that has chronic inflammation and is stuck in, a system that can't help her. It's so hard. I mean, I just spent the last couple of weeks traveling and just being out in America and out in Mexico, like just kind of, I live in these little retreat like settings, right? And I stay out of the mix as much as I desire, but I was in the mix. I had other things to do and I was just in the mix. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I forget what the modern human is up against.
Yeah.
And they're up against a schedule that doesn't work for their body. They're up against a culture that reinforces consumerism on all fronts. and they're up against a culture of chronic inflammation, and they're up against a media culture of fear. And any one of those things is enough to take anyone out.
Yeah.
So usually what'll happen to overcome the fear is to remember your why. So what I would do is like, remember why you do this work. And then what are your convictions? And I would actually read those before bed, and I would read them when you wake up.
Okay.
Because you want it in the liminal space.
Mm-hmm.
So, and upon arising, because what you really need to do is to conquer the ego. And so does everyone else who's listening to this. Is like, God, I'm glad Courtney's in the hot seat, not me, because I have the same exact issues right now.
Well, I feel like I've made so much progress, and then it was like a very clear wall, but it's like still a wall, and I'm like right up against it because so much else has fallen into place. But this awareness of just kind of the mental, gymnastics I'm doing and how, that whole idea of like controlling perception plays into it. So yeah, this is helpful.
Yeah, because you were coming up. I mean, you came in. It's interesting. Like when you re-listen to this, you'll hear like in the beginning, like there was more of a dichotomous relationship with your potential course members. Mm-hmm. I think this whole thing is an amazing marketing campaign, by the way. I really do. Oh, yeah. Like I would do a ton of lives on this, and of like really what you're up against in helping people find you, and how it's so hard for people to invest in that, which will have just a dramatic return on investment in really every aspect of their life. It's like every single year with the Body Thrive habits and now the Wild habits, I'm like shocked at how much less life costs me. Like so much further out of the consumer cycles, and my body feels better and better year over year. It's it gets kind of wild, I think, like just how deep we can go into feeling great and being in good company. And people don't know this, right? And that's why we do marketing, is because we take it on ourselves to help shine the light.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, like it being, a spiritual path to let people know that you exist and what you're doing. Like that's the deeper work of like, how can I move through that to be visible so that people can actually experience that. And
you're partnering with them in their own resistance.
Yeah.
And I would really turn this into a marketing campaign, just because it's real and it's honest and it's hard. And I would talk about the polyvagal theory and in the whole, the whole social nervous system, and why you care so much, and what your convictions are, and how you see people who don't get the kind of help they need or try to DIY it, and how DIY doesn't save anyone any money. So why not have fun? Why not be in the club?
Yeah. And I do have been talking about it a lot in my course too, because I work with predominantly women, and so many of them are overriding their own needs because of that, like, that social nervous system that's pulling them to people please and prioritize other people before their own needs. And, the ways in which it doesn't really support our highest functioning. It's more like a default, like a way to keep ourselves safe, rather than to really, bring ourselves in a state of thriving more. So
that's right. It's all contraction. It's all leading to, it's all fear driven. It's contraction, and it's leading to a more limited future, not a more unlimited future. So the more you take a stand for that, and I would revisit your convictions and write them, update them with your, with polyvagal theory. I think that'll be like, make it more relevant to you, like make that stuff less dead, way more alive, plant your flag in the sand, make a stand for it. I think of Deepak Chopra right now in the infomercials in the 1990s, maybe even early 90s, that he was running. So this was back before back before people were learning on the internet, and where if you wanted to book your own TV, you would pay. And so he did that. And he did these infomercials that were like 20 minutes long or so. And he would teach people about Ayurveda. He would teach people about like the power of of feeling
Well, I
better.
didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just go back and think like, yeah, I watched those. Like, I don't even know how, because I'm not, I never was a big TV watcher. I'm like, but I had started to learn a little bit about holistic medicine. And here's like this Indian guy with like really bad clothes and a bad haircut. He's so much cooler. Like, he's gotten so freaking cool over the last 30 years.
Yeah,
But
he has cool
man,
glasses.
Google it on YouTube. See if you can pull up one of these things and think about his drive to help people towards the goal and what it took, because he was paying, I'm sure he was paying out of pocket for that.
Yeah.
You know, and he had a pipeline, he had a funnel, but he had to still do those infomercials, and he had to pour his heart into it so people could connect and see the light. Like, people have to be able to see your light in order to see their light if their light is shrouded with chronic inflammation. So if you're not in your light, and if you're not actually showing them the way to the goal, then it's a total disservice.
Yeah.
And if you know what their boundaries are and you can meet those boundaries, like that's what good marketing is like, these are all their boundaries. And you're designing a funnel that addresses boundary 1, boundary 2. This is what keeps people from the goal. They think they can do it on their own. Well, guess what? Our habits aren't our own. Right? You have the habits of the people you're spending time with. So if you think those people have led you to feel exactly how you feel right now, and if you're 30 pounds overweight and you have some mild existential anxiety and you don't like going to work in the morning and you don't like the way you're raising your kids, like, whatever you're surrounded by now, like, that's reinforcing where you're at. You know, like educating and helping, be like, and here's the hope. Now, like, it doesn't have to be that way. Like, how good could it be? That's what I'm interested in. And that's what I have guided people to. And here's Jane, and Jane was in that situation. That's here. You know, like, that's what's going on in that part of the funnel. Or how you're doing Facebook Lives or social media marketing or sending a newsletter or connecting.
Well, it's interesting in studying the social nervous system too, recognizing that the idea of like standing out, especially for many women, like to stand out and to be exposed to actual threat, like that historically has been a real threat for a lot of women, you know, to like go against the grain or to step out of the community. And it's like, that's what I feel my nervous system dealing with as I'm getting to this place of more exposure or stepping out more. And again, like, can have those thoughts of, I know I'm doing this for other people. And then also simultaneously recognizing where my nervous system is contracting around it. And realizing,
I would totally reframe all of that, because I don't think that's suiting you at all. And
that's what I'm saying, like recognizing that, but realizing it's something to move past.
I don't even think it's like that. I think it's the opposite. I think it's like, you're actually guiding people towards a much safer. It's like, you're not guiding people out of community. They're already out of community. They're already hanging out in, this is like my culture tank. They're already in modern culture. And modern culture, by definition, identifies separate self. So it's actually pushing people apart. It reinforces egoic separate self. What you have is, you've got Courtney's Club, right? Whatever that's called. And you're actually directly creating like a tight knit connection in a connected community of people that thrive. Right. So you're actually creating this social structure for people to deeply exhale and deeply relax and get to the root cause of their imbalances in a really safe, nurturing, nourishing experience. And then they take that and they actually replicate that. You know, and we find, go ahead.
Oh no, I understand that. And I totally see that is what I'm guiding them towards. And I guess what I'm saying is, I can recognize the patterns of why there can be contraction around that, because I'm seeing it in myself, that this idea of doing something, expanding myself, becoming more visible in my work, being more authentic, it feels like that place of stepping out of safety, even though it is stepping into more authenticity and into more community. And so the same thing for, I think, a lot of the people I work with, that can be this fear of like, if I change what I'm doing, am I losing something? You know, because, and that's what I've been conditioned to kind of feel is safe, like doing the things how I've always done them, that's safe, without recognizing that they're stepping into something that's actually safer. But it's, I guess what I'm saying more is the recognition of how, like, the role the nervous system plays in that, and like, in when we are in a state of threat, it's a dysregulated form of how the nervous system is functioning. Like, hold on to what's safe, hold on to what's kind of camouflaging us and less authentic. But then this work is really about,
I'm just seeing safe equals complacent.
yeah,
Right. Like, that's what we're talking about. So
yeah.
safe is complacent, and that's actually unsafe.
Yeah. And I'm saying the idea is like, that's how it has functioned in a way that was dysregulated. So to get into an actual safer place, it is about moving beyond that. But like, people's patterning, or my own patterning that I'm seeing, is like, okay, this feels safe for me because it's what I've been doing. It's what's kept me safe this far. But actually, it's not keeping me safe. It's not getting me closer to what I want to be and being more, you know, helping other people and doing what I want to do on a deeper level.
That's why I would really look at defining this.
Yeah.
And getting really clear, because what I'm hearing and what you're saying is that there's an interpretation of a pattern that's really creating a lot of that's actually reinforcing fear and limitation. So I personally wouldn't invest my awareness in that way of thinking at all. Yeah. I would look at, like, I mean, my feeling, it's not like I feel invincible, but I do feel increasingly grounded and at home in stepping into a larger public sphere. And that it could have to do with urine therapy, honestly. Like, it could have to do with the upcycling of the essence of urine, like, because I am stepping, like, 2022, we're doing a lot of much bigger exposure stuff next year. And I don't have any of the stuff that you have going on. So I'm like, well, why don't I have that? I have had that in the past. We went over a lot of, like, I think how I've used tools to move out of it. But I would say, like, this is why you practice.
Yeah.
This is why you do yoga. This is why you meditate. This is why you do breathing practices. This is why I exercise. It's why I walk. It's why I fast. It's why I parent the way I parent. It's like all that fuss thus, like reestablishment of the essence of self. Because at that point, you are as the creator, and you've transcended so much of cultural bullshit that it's very easy to act. And it's very easy to make a stand and be visible without fear of, like, because whatever happens, like, that's swaha. So it's svasta, seated in the self, and swaha, that, like, and what will happen will happen. Right. Like, we can't control that. But what do you want your life to stand for at the end of the day? What do you want your children to remember you by, and what you did and who you were? And I think the more public you are about all of this stuff, that equals marketing. Being public about what you're thinking about and what you're experiencing in other people, like, that is marketing. Having your course members, like, in a blitz, it's like, hey, like, you just kind of go over, like, what's working about you being in the group? Like, what's changed? Like, where were you a year ago? Where are you now? Great. Is there anyone in your life that, like, I should talk to? That, you know, just to, and it's not, you know, like, I'm not going to sell them to the course. It's just someone who should have a deep dive conversation and have some support around their goals right now. And it's such a good time of year for that. People can gift those sessions.
Yeah, that's a great idea, gifting. Yeah, I feel like I have had an uptick. And on your last call, where you were saying, don't assume that people don't want this during the holidays or they're too busy for it. So that's really helped me to just be like, I'm going to keep going until I take some Christmas vacation. And so it's been paying off.
Awesome. Yeah. Good. Yeah. You're right where you need to be. Like, this was good. This is a good next prep too, for, like, you should be fired up to be like, yeah, I can't wait to, like, get people to the yes, and then get on the same side of the table, put your arm around them. Like, let's figure out how to get you to your goal. Like, I am on your team. Yeah. Yeah. I had to learn that. And actually, when this is done in-person conversations, there actually is, you pick up your chair and you walk around the table and you get on their side of the table. Like, let's like figure out where the money is going to come from.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Kate.
You're welcome. I'm excited to see your next communications with your people.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.